Because sometimes love deserves another chance, and sometimes that chance doesn't come in a castle or with a crown. Sometimes it comes in a small coffee shop with a woman who held on to faith and a man who had everything except peace. Because sometimes they say love deserves another chance, but Ella had stopped believing that a long time ago. At 26, her life didn't look anything like the stories she grew up reading. There was no prince, no castle, no happily ever after. Instead, there was a small, cramped apartment, a younger sister she was raising on her own, and a coffee shop job that barely covered the bills. But still, Ella smiled every morning when she tied her apron. Still, she hummed softly while she made lattes. Still, she whispered a quiet prayer under her breath before the day began. Lord, give me strength. And don't let me forget that you're still here. Because Ella believed something that kept her going, even when her heart ached. Even when she felt invisible in a city full of wealth and power. She believed that God hadn't forgotten her. Even if the world had, the bell above the coffee shop door rang constantly during the morning rush. Businessmen in suits, women in heels, students with messy hair. They all ordered their drinks with impatience, scrolling their phones, never really looking at her. Ella didn't mind. She'd learned to find joy in the small things, the way steamed milk swirled into a perfect heart, the smile of a regular who remembered her name, the simple blessing of being able to provide for her sister. But sometimes, late at night, when the city grew quiet, she wondered if love was only for other people, for women with beauty that turned heads, for girls who didn't have responsibility weighing them down. She shook the thought away quickly. Lord, you see me. That's enough. At least, she told herself it was enough. That Thursday morning started like any other. Ella was wiping down the counter when the door opened, and in walked a man who didn't look like he belonged in her little coffee shop at all. Tall, sharp suit, confident stride, the kind of man you only saw in magazines, the kind of man who didn't wait in line for his own coffee, the kind of man Ella had promised herself not to notice. He ordered quietly, his voice calm, smooth, and when she handed him his drink, she caught the faintest glimpse of tired eyes. Eyes that said, I've had everything, and somehow it's still not enough. Ella blinked, handing over the cup with a smile. Have a good day, she said. She didn't expect him to look at her, but he did. And for the first time in a long time, Ella felt seen. What she didn't know was that this small, ordinary moment was the beginning of something extraordinary. Because sometimes, love doesn't come with fireworks and fairy tales. Sometimes it slips in quietly. Through a coffee shop door, with a man who didn't believe in faith, and a woman who refused to let hers go. The door swung shut behind him with a soft chime of the bell. Ella looked up, and for a second she forgot to breathe. He didn't look like anyone else who came in here. Most of her customers were students, office workers, tired moms juggling kids. But this man, he looked like he belonged in a magazine. Tall, tailored suit. Shoes that probably cost more than her rent. Everything about him whispered power. But when Ella glanced at his face, she noticed something else. His eyes. They were tired. Not the kind of tired coffee could fix. The kind of tired that comes from carrying too much for too long. He walked up to the counter, scanning the menu as if it actually mattered. Black coffee, he said finally, voice smooth, calm. Ella fumbled with the cup, her fingers clumsy from nerves. As she poured, the hot liquid sloshed over the rim, spilling onto the counter. Her cheeks flamed. "Oh no! I'm so sorry!" She grabbed a cloth and wiped furiously, mumbling apologies. Most wealthy-looking men she'd sit would have rolled their eyes, or barked at her to hurry up. But instead, he smiled. A small, amused smile. Like he hadn't been smiled at himself in a long time. "It's fine," he said. His voice wasn't harsh. It was gentle, patient, like he had nowhere else to be. Ella blinked at him, caught off guard. She handed him the cup, finally steady. "Here you go. Black coffee, on the house. Since, I nearly burned your hand off." He chuckled softly. "No need, but thank you." His gaze lingered on her just a second longer than usual. Not in the way that made her uncomfortable, but in the way that made her feel seen. For a moment, the world around her blurred. The line of customers, the chatter, the clinking cups. It was just him and her, and something neither of them could quite name. He turned to leave, cup in hand. Ella let out a shaky breath. Then, as if remembering something, he glanced back over his shoulder. "What's your name?" he asked. Ella blinked. "Oh, it's Ella." He nodded once. "Ella, nice to meet you." And with that, he stepped out the door, disappearing into the busy city street. Ella stood frozen, cloth still in hand. Her heart raced, though she couldn't say why. It wasn't like anything had happened. But something about him felt different. James came back the next morning, and the morning after that, and the one after that too. At first, Ella thought it was coincidence. The city was full of cafes. Why would a billionaire choose hers? But after the fourth visit, she raised an eyebrow when he ordered. "Another black coffee?" she teased. "You sure you're not getting bored of it?" He smirked. "Maybe I like consistency." She handed over the cup. "Or maybe you like free refills when I spill it on you." He chuckled. And just like that, a rhythm began. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't flirtation that burned too bright. It was small things. A shared smile. A laugh over bad latte art. A pause at the counter when the morning rush quieted. James never said much about his world. The suits, the cars, the meetings that stretched past midnight. But sometimes, when his phone buzzed and his expression dimmed, Ella caught a glimpse of the weight he carried. One morning, he surprised her. "Do you really believe it?" he asked suddenly. Ella blinked. "Believe what?" "That there's something bigger." God, faith, whatever you call it. She wiped down the counter, thinking. "Yes," she said simply. "I do." He leaned against the counter, his gaze searching hers. "And you really think he cares? About you? About me? About all this?" Ella smiled softly. "I don't just think it. I've seen it. In the way I've been carried when I should have fallen. In the peace I can't explain. In the strength to keep going when I shouldn't have any left." James was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, almost to himself, "Must be nice." To feel that sure, Ella tilted her head. "Don't you ever wonder?" He let out a small laugh, though it wasn't amused. "Every day. I have everything people say you should want, but when it's quiet, it feels empty, like I'm chasing shadows." Her heart softened. "Maybe you're not chasing the wrong thing," she said gently. "Maybe you're just looking in the wrong place." He looked at her like she'd spoken a language he'd almost forgotten. And for the first time, the polished armor of the billionaire seemed to crack. By the time he left that day, Ella realized something. This wasn't just a customer. This wasn't just a man in a suit. This was someone searching, someone who didn't need another cup of coffee, but maybe needed hope. and as she wiped the counter again, Ella whispered a quiet prayer. Lord, if you're doing something here, help me not to get in the way. The invitation wasn't hers. Ella had only agreed to help a friend with catering. It was a charity gala, glittering chandeliers, gowns that swept across marble floors, laughter that echoed through high ceilings. The kind of place Ella never belonged. She wore a borrowed dress. Simple. Blue. Not fancy enough to blend in, not bold enough to stand out. Her job was simple too. Pass trays, refill drinks, smile politely. Invisible, forgettable, safe. At least that's what she thought. James saw her before she saw him. He was surrounded as usual. Investors, board members, women in designer gowns. But none of them held his attention. It was Ella, moving carefully through the crowd, a tray balanced in her hands. The same Ella who had poured his coffee with shaky hands just weeks ago. The same Ella whose words still echoed in his mind. Maybe you're just looking in the wrong place. He excused himself, ignoring the whispers, and crossed the ballroom floor. Ella froze when she felt a presence at her side. She turned, nearly dropping her tray. James, she whispered. He smiled faintly. You look... He paused, searching for the right word. Beautiful. Her cheeks burned. This old thing? It's borrowed, doesn't matter, he said. It's you. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The music swirled around them, the lights shimmering. He set the tray down on a nearby table and held out his hand. Dance with me. Ella shook her head quickly. I can't. I'm working. Then let this be a break. His hand stayed extended, steady, inviting. Her heart thudded. Everything in her screamed to say no. This wasn't her world. This wasn't her story. But something softer whispered yes. So she slipped her hand into his. The crowd blurred as he led her onto the dance floor. Eyes turned, murmurs rose. But for Ella, it was only him. He held her carefully, not too close, not too far. Like he knew she was fragile. Like he knew he was too. Why are you really here, Ella? He asked quietly. She smiled wryly. Passing out hors d'oeuvres. What about you? He chuckled softly. Trying to forget how empty all this feels. Her eyes softened. You don't have to stay empty, James. Something in his chest tightened. Her words cut deeper than any deal, any headline, any promise money had ever made. For the first time in a long time, he let himself believe she might be right. The song ended too soon. Ella stepped back quickly, remembering herself. She grabbed her tray, cheeks flushed. James wanted to stop her, to hold on. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he whispered, just loud enough for her to hear. You belong here, Ella. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And as she walked away, his words lingered in the air like a promise. The headlines came the very next morning. Billionaire James Asher and mystery woman spotted at gala together. Cinderella or gold digger? Ella's face was plastered across gossip sites. One photo showed her in James's arms on the dance floor. Her borrowed dress compared cruelly to the glittering gowns around her. Another showed her carrying a tray, labeled Barista Playing Princess. Her stomach sank. The humiliation was unbearable. She had only danced once. She had only let herself believe, for a fleeting moment, that maybe she belonged. Now the whole city was laughing. Ella didn't go to the cafe that day. She stayed home, curled on the couch, her little sister curled beside her. You didn't do anything wrong, her sister whispered. But Ella couldn't shake the shame. This is why people like me don't belong in their world, she muttered. It always ends the same, with me being the joke she prayed that night, though the words felt heavy. Lord, I don't understand. If this isn't from you, take it away. But if it is, show me how to stand. Her chest ached, but she knew her heart wasn't ready to give up just yet. James, meanwhile, was furious. Not at Ella, at the headlines, at the vultures who twisted something sacred into spectacle. He had been in scandals before. It was part of the life he lived. But this time it was different. This time it wasn't just his name dragged through the mud. It was hers. And the truth was, he hadn't protected her. He should have said something, should have silenced the rumors, should have found her, reassured her. But pride and fear held him back. Pride whispered, "This will blow over." "Don't make it worse." Fear whispered, "What if she doesn't want to see you again?" So he stayed silent. And in the silence, Ella's doubts grew. At the cafe a week later, Ella kept her head down, avoiding the curious glances of customers. When James finally walked in, her heart clenched. But instead of relief, she felt anger. "You should go," she said quietly, not meeting his eyes. He froze. "Ella." "You don't get it," she whispered, tears threatening. "I can't do this. I can't live in your spotlight. I can't be the punchline. I thought you saw me, but now I just feel small again." Her voice cracked. "And I promised myself I wouldn't let anyone make me feel that way again." James's chest tightened. He wanted to reach for her, but his words stuck in his throat. And before he could say anything else, she turned and walked away. That night, Ella sat at her window, looking out at the city lights. Her heart whispered one more prayer. "Lord, if love deserves another chance, show me how to believe it, because right now, I can't." James sat in his penthouse, floor-to-ceiling windows glowing with the city lights. The world called it success, but it felt like emptiness. The glass of whiskey on the table didn't help. The silence didn't either. No boardroom applause, no billion-dollar deal could quiet the ache inside him. And now, Ella was gone. The next morning, he met his oldest friend and mentor, William, a man who had built his own empire but never lost his faith. They sat across from each other in William's quiet study, surrounded by shelves of books, the smell of leather and coffee filling the air. James let out a long breath. "She was different," he admitted. "Not like the others. She didn't care about my money, my name. She just believed in something bigger, and I don't even know what to do with that." William leaned back, eyes steady. "Do you know what you're really missing, James?" James frowned. "I have everything a person could want." "And still, you're empty." James's jaw tightened. "Yes." William's voice softened. "Then what you're missing isn't money. It's meaning. It's faith. You don't need another deal to save you. You need a savior." James stared down at his hands. "I don't know how to believe like she does. I've tried to fill the hole with everything else, and it never works." "That's because nothing else will," William said gently. "Ella's faith isn't her own strength. It's God's. And he's not waiting for you to have it all figured out. He's waiting for you to let him in." Meanwhile, across town, Ella sat on her bed, journal unopened, Bible on her lap. Her sister sat beside her quietly. "You really liked him, didn't you?" her sister asked softly. Ella blinked back tears. "Yes, but liking him doesn't mean it's right. I can't build a life with someone who doesn't share my faith. It would break me in half." Her sister squeezed her hand. Maybe God brought him into your life for more than love. Maybe you planted a seed. And maybe that's enough for now. Ella closed her eyes, whispering a prayer. Lord, if there's hope for him, show me. If you're writing something bigger than I can see, give me faith to wait. That night, James sat in his penthouse again, but this time with a different book in his hands. Not a business report, not a contract. The Bible. Pages turned slowly, his eyes pausing over words Ella had once mentioned. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. James closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he whispered into the silence. If you're real, if you're there, I need that rest. Because I can't keep going like this. And though the city outside stayed loud and bright, something quiet shifted inside him, like the beginning of an answer. The cafe was busy that morning. Students hunched over laptops, mothers juggling strollers, the usual hum of steaming milk and clinking cups. Ella kept her head down, focused on the register. She hadn't seen James in weeks, and she told herself she was fine with that. But when the bell over the door rang and she looked up, her heart stopped. James stood there, no tailored suit, no polished armor, just jeans, a button-down, and an expression she had never seen before. Open, humble, human. He walked straight to the counter. Customers turned, whispers rising. Everyone knew who he was. Everyone was watching. Ella's voice wavered. James, you shouldn't be here. But he didn't flinch. Ella, I owe you an apology, and I'm not leaving until you hear it. Her cheeks flushed. This isn't the place. It has to be here, he said firmly, because I stayed silent when I should have defended you. I let the world tell lies about you, and I didn't fight for the truth. That was my pride, my fear, and I'm done letting either of those stand in the way. The cafe grew quieter. Even the espresso machine seemed to pause. James's voice dropped lower, steadier. You were right, Ella. What I've been missing isn't another deal. It isn't more money. It's God. And if you'll let me, I want to start figuring that out. With you, Ella's throat tightened. Her hands shook as she gripped the counter. This was not the James the world knew. This wasn't the billionaire in headlines. This was just a man. A man trying. A man humbling himself. Tears blurred her vision. James, I don't need perfection from you. But if this is real, if this is really what you want, then it has to be built on him first. Not money, not image, not pride. James nodded, eyes wet. I know. And that's what I want. Not just a second chance with you, Ella, but a first chance with faith. Because I've seen what it looks like in you. And I want to know it too. The silence in the cafe broke as someone cleared their throat. Then, to Ella's surprise, the older woman at the corner table whispered, Say yes. A ripple of laughter softened the tension. Ella smiled through tears, and for the first time in weeks, she let hope back in. Okay, she whispered, one step at a time. Together, James reached across the counter, not for a grand gesture, just for her hand. Simple, steady, sacred. And this time, Ella didn't pull away. The cafe slowly returned to its normal buzz. But for Ella and James, the world felt different. They didn't rush. There was no fairy tale carriage waiting outside, no whirlwind ending, just a man learning to walk in faith, and a woman brave enough to believe in second chances. That evening, they walked side by side down a quiet city street. No cameras, no headlines, just the sound of their footsteps and the rhythm of something new beginning. James glanced at her, hands tucked in his pockets. I don't know much about faith yet. I'll probably mess it up, but I want to learn. I want to know the God you trust so much. And I want to do it with you. Ella's chest warmed. That's all he asks, James. Not perfection, just a willing heart. They stopped at her apartment door. The porch light flickered above them, cast in a soft glow. James hesitated. Do you really think I can change? Ella smiled, gentle and sure. I don't just think it. I believe it, because I've seen what grace can do, and I believe sometimes love deserves another chance. He let out a slow breath, as if her words lifted a weight he'd carried for years. Then he reached for her hand. Not grand, not flashy, just real. And for Ella, that was more than enough. Because sometimes love doesn't come wrapped in perfection. Sometimes it comes in pieces, messy, fragile, unfinished. But when God writes the story, even broken love can be restored. Even weary hearts can believe again. And sometimes, love really does deserve another chance. Ella and James remind us that real love isn't about money, power, or perfection. It's about faith. It's about grace. And it's about saying yes to a God who restores broken hearts. If this story spoke to you, subscribe for more narrated tales of love, faith, and healing. And share it with someone who needs the reminder that love really can deserve another chance.